Okay, so in this video we want to talk about grading assessments and grading assignments. This is going to be a technical guide, and in some future videos we will look at the applied side. So first of all, it's important to understand the purpose or purposes of grading. And there's the obvious purpose, which is as an assessment. We want to be able to evaluate the student's learning, ensure that they're meeting course objectives, and measure the degree to which they're meeting those objectives. But equally important for us is grading is an opportunity for us to enhance and support the student's learning experience. And we can do this in a number of ways. One of the things that we want to do is acknowledge students' efforts. A course like an Introduction to Programming course tends to be quite difficult. Students tend to struggle with it, and sometimes they mistake that struggle and think they're not cut out for this. And it's important to acknowledge their efforts and let them know that this struggle is expected and this is part of the learning process. We also want to foster their learning of the course concepts. So wherever they seem to be struggling, especially with particular topics, we want to be able to identify that and support their learning and mastery of those concepts. We want to develop their ability to apply those concepts, and we want to encourage them to continue in the course. And so this is a big part of what we're trying to achieve in the grading, and not just assign a number or a letter to the work that they've turned in. So all of the assignments that the students complete are completed through the edX platform. And a good way to find the deadlines and due dates is to check the Important Deadlines tab. And if you go there, what you'll find is a list week by week of assignments and countdown timers to the deadline for that particular assignment or the assignments of that week. Any timer that is zeroed out is for assignments for which the due date has already passed, which means they should already be graded, or we should be currently grading them. And the others are countdown timers that have days, hours, minutes, and seconds until the due date. You'll notice that some assignments are marked audit only and some assignments are marked ID verified only, and the ID verified assignments are the ones that we're interested in. These are the ones that we need to grade. There are two different categories and two different formats of graded works that the students turn in. There are design reviews and project challenges, and the two formats are open response assessments and VOCA Rem assignments. These roughly correspond, but we'll look at each in a little more detail. The design reviews are written works emphasizing design. We want the students to focus on the front-end problem-solving aspects of computer science as much as the follow-up, which is the implementation of an algorithm to solve the problem. And then the project challenges are the applied assignments in which the students do write programs. The formats are open response assessment, which are done graded completely in edX, and VOCA Rem assignments, which are done in a third-party tool called VOCA Rem. You'll have a set of login credentials for both edX and VOCA Rem, and it will be a different set of login credentials. The open response assessments are submitted and graded in edX. So if you log into edX and you look at the course outline and you find the week that has the assignment that you want to grade, and you work your way to the graded assignment in edX, you want to make sure that your view is set to staff, and then you can scroll down and see the instructions that the students follow. And if you continue to scroll down, you'll see two submission areas. There's always two submission areas for an assignment, for an open response assessment. The first one is always for audit students, and the second one is always for ID verified students. And it's the second one that we need to grade and focus on. And if you scroll down below that, you'll see a set of buttons, one of which says Grade Available Responses. And if you click on this button, it will check out the first available response that is ungraded that a student has submitted, and you'll see a little indicator here that at least one is checked out. It may be the case that more than one is checked out. More than one grader may be grading right now, and it will also show how many remain to be checked out and graded. And if you scroll down a little bit from there, you'll see a link which you can use to download the files that the students submitted for this assignment. Once you download and open the student's submission, if you scroll down further on that edX page, you'll find the grading rubric for that assignment. Each open response assessment has a grading rubric, and the grading rubric is composed of a set of criteria. This one has the criteria, documents the 6 problem-solving steps, shows stepwise refinement, algorithm instructions are clear, algorithm instructions are complete, and each criteria will be assessed to a specific standard, so excellent or good or fair or minimal based on whether or not it meets this standard. And we can select the standard met by the student's work for this criteria, and we should provide some formative comments to help the student improve, especially if they don't get an excellent mark. Once we've finished grading this student's assignment and you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see 2 buttons. One, Submit Assessment, which will simply submit this graded assessment and take you back to where we started. And the other one, Submit Assessment and Continue Grading. And this one will submit the assessment that you just graded and immediately check out the next available submission for you to grade. The VOCA Rem assignments, the applied programming assignments, are submitted and graded in a third-party tool called VOCA Rem. And when you log into VOCA Rem, you're going to want to select Manage Classes. And if you're a TA in one section, you'll only have one class section here. But if you're a TA in multiple sections, you might need to click on this drop-down list and select the specific section that you're grading for. And then you can select from this drop-down list the assessment that you want to grade or the assignment that you want to grade. You'll notice that there are 2 versions of each assignment, just like the open response assessments in edX, and that's because the first one is always for audit students and the second one is always for the ID verified students. We are interested in grading the assignments and submissions turned in by the ID verified students, so we don't have to worry about the non-ID verified assignments. Once you've selected the assignment that you want to grade, you can click on the Submission tab and you'll see a list of all the students' submissions for this assignment. Each submission includes a unique ID for that student, whether or not their submission was on time, a current grade, whether or not they've received any feedback by a grader yet, and there'll be a link to view that student submission. So here we see that none of these have been graded yet because there's no feedback. So if we click on one of these, then we'll get to see that student's submission. You'll see that student's unique ID, whether or not it was on time. There's a drop-down list of each of their submissions, so students can make multiple submissions for the same assignment. And by default, the most recent submission is going to be selected. But it's sometimes useful to go ahead and click in here and look at some of their prior submissions and see how their understanding of their problem and their attempts to solve it evolved. On this left-hand side, you'll see the files associated with the submission, which includes the source code files that the student turned in, as well as some reports that are automatically generated by scripts that run when the student submits the assignment. If you select one of these files, it'll be displayed in the middle here. If you select the student's source code file, you'll see their source code, color syntax highlighted, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see the grading area. Just like the open response assessments, each VOCA Rem assignment has a rubric composed of a number of criteria, and each criteria is associated with a number of points, and there's a standard for getting each possible amount of points. We'll look at the specific rubrics for these assignments in an upcoming video. You'll notice that some of these already have points associated with them, and that's because most of these VOCA Rem assignments have scripts that do some automated grading. In this case, the script was able to determine that the code that the student turned in contains no syntax errors, so they get full credit on that, that it correctly handles input and output with print statements and input statements, that it has a requisite number of decisions. On the other hand, it's not quite up to par on iteration, which means loops, and user-defined functions, and then some of these things just have to be graded completely manually. And so our job is to fill this out according to the rubric and apply and provide appropriate formative feedback in the comments. Some other things that come in handy when we're grading these VOCA Rem assignments is we can click on the reports drop down and we can view the reports generated by the automatic scripts. And this can come in really handy because you can see in some cases some more detail. In this case, you can see again that the user-defined functions were not given full credit, the iteration was not given full credit, and the correctness and naming have to be graded manually. There's also an actions drop down which we can use to run the student's code. That can be helpful when we're trying to test and debug some aspect of it. We can also rerun the grading script and rerun the submission script. This comes in handy if you find that the student's code is basically correct, but there's some small, perhaps typo or other small error that's preventing it from executing correctly. And so we can make that small change to the code, rerun the grading script, and it will update the points automatically, and then we can continue grading from there. There's also the ability to edit the student's files, and if we do that, we should provide some comments specifically and explicitly stating what code of theirs we changed or added and why. And we can also click in the code and provide comments directly in the code. So this is a great way to provide targeted feedback for the students. Once we've finished assessing and grading this student's assignment, we want to make sure we click the Save button. On a side note, it's probably a good idea when you first view a student's submission to grade to go ahead and put your initials in here and click Save, because there might be more than one grader grading at the same time, and there's no other indication that some other grader is currently working on this. So if you're both grading the same assignment at the same time and you don't know it, you're changing these values and giving different comments and not effectively using the grading time. So the first thing you should do when you select a student's VOCA Rem assignment to grade is put your initials in here and hit Save. And then if you go to grade a student's assignment and you see some initials or something else in here, you should leave that one alone and move on to the next one. These buttons will take you to the next submission or the previous submission. And we'll talk about the specific grading rubrics and how to apply those in a future video, and we'll do some examples of that.